Welcome back to another episode of Trash Talk. I'm Jon-Bernard, this is Nick. We are the K-Roos Bros, giving you the fight news from around the world. UFC Qatar is in the books, and for a fight night card, I think it was one of the best cards of the year.
Well, if you looked at the knockouts that were on there, you had a great co-main event in Ian Garry versus Bilal, and then you had a good main event in Arman Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker. Somewhat of an anticipated fight. Kind of went how everyone thought it would go.
Also a bit of buzz after the fight. Ian Garry and Khamzat Chimaev getting into a push and shove backstage. That lit the internet on fire. That was very entertaining to watch.
So it did have everything. So as a fight night card, for me personally, how was this not a pay-per-view
Probably
card?
should have been a pay-per-view.
This has been probably a fight night, probably the best fight night of the year, hands down, very easily. But I could say this would have been a top 5 pay-per-view if it was a pay-per-view. So like the way these Qataris, the guys in the UAE, the way they put on cards in their countries, that should be the standard.
They could have done that in Abu Dhabi.
Very easily.
Really, yeah. Abu Dhabi was a bit of a letdown, obviously, with the eye poke. But it seems like these UAE, Middle Eastern cards are always getting banged. So they must be putting up some good money. And to put two, marquee fights in Bilal versus Ian Garry and Arman Tsarukyan top of the division clash with Dan Hooker, they're obviously paying for it there. And they're entertaining watchers. And they live up to the hype.
The only disappointing thing for me, if I had to have one criticism.
What?
Ian Garry versus Bilal wasn't a 5-round fight. Like
that
as
was
a number one contender fight, which is kind of what it was, or, two top 5 people ranked against each other. I understand it wasn't the main event.
Yeah.
But this very easily could have been and should have been a 5-round fight.
We were in New York watching it on our phone as we're walking to a cafe, and I'm thinking that round 3's over, and then they call it, and the commentary is like, and that's it in the book. I'm like, Nick, I thought there was another 4 and 5. It felt like there was more to be had in that fight. Bilal was sticking around. The guy's got a chin on him.
Especially like the high stakes of the fight. How much, the stipulations of this fight mean so much for the division, especially like Bilal, who did cop an eye poke, didn't get the point deduction for
2
Ian.
eye pokes.
So like there was a lot going in. I feel like, look, if they did it a 5-round, that probably would have been more beneficial.
Yeah, well, let's get straight into it. The talking points from UFC Qatar now is there was a great call out by Ian Garry. So who deserves the next title shot against Islam? Ian Garry or Kamaru Usman?
Ian Garry does, and that's because Ian Garry has talked the talk and walked the walk.
Yeah.
He's beaten the top contenders, beaten a former champion in Bilal Muhammad. I mean, he said it in his post-fight press conferences. I did the most against Shavkat Rakhmonov. Yeah. I beat Carlos Prates, and now I beat a former champion in Bilal.
He's been very active. You can't deny that. Ian Garry, as much as people want to hate him, he's obviously gaining some fans and momentum in winning. He's been the most active guy in the welterweight division, and he's winning. He gets on the mic, he calls his shot. It was a great call out, called out Islam. He's saying this would be the prodigy of McGregor versus the prodigy of Khabib in that division. Hey, that sounds like great hype. Whereas Kamaru Usman, the guy has not been active at all. Who has he really beaten in the last year, 2 years? Joaquin Buckley. Like, you're ranked 8th right now. He's calling for a title shot against Islam. It's like, it just sounds like you want your mate to do you a favor, and because you're, Muslim brothers, he's going to give you a payday. I think Ian Garry does deserve it, especially with everyone in welterweight right now and Shavkat being off for so long.
The only thing that makes sense is Islam saying this is a legacy fight, because there's no one in the welterweight division that has the name and resume of Kamaru Usman.
That's true.
But I feel like the UFC, by making Ian Garry ranked 2nd and Kamaru Usman ranked 8th, the writing's on the wall. Kamaru Usman's not getting the title shot. And the only people that are really campaigning for the Usman title shot are Kamaru Usman, Islam, and Abdelaziz.
Yeah.
So like there is obviously a clear bias there, but they are very powerful and people that have a lot of sway in the UFC. So I wouldn't be surprised if that fight happens. I honestly wouldn't be disappointed either. I think it would be a good fight. But if we're going on who's most deserving right now, it's probably Ian Garry. And Ian Garry versus Islam is a good fight to make it. It's very entertaining. There's a lot of hype going into it. I feel like Islam would dismantle him.
Well, Ian Garry says he would go to Georgia and get all the wrestling help that he needs to stop the takedowns of Islam, so you don't see another Islam versus JDM.
I don't think they'll approve of his cuck behaviour. I don't think they'll let him in the country.
In Georgia? I don't know. Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But hey, look, I think that is the next matchup to make. You clearly said it. Ian Garry's ranked 2. Usman is ranked 8th. I think Usman needs another fight before he wants to make a claim for a title shot. Like how Shavkat has come out and said, I need another fight maybe before I go for a title shot, even though I did beat Ian Garry. So Ian Garry is the clear, he's ranked number 2. He's the clear next contender. He deserves a shot.
If we're going off who is the most deserving, Shavkat's undefeated and beaten Ian Garry.
But he's just been off for 2 years.
But he's just been off. So at least he understands, like, look, I've been inactive. I need to do some more things before I get a title shot. Kamaru Usman's like, yeah, look, I'm 1-4. I'm 1-3 in my last 4 fights.
Yeah.
I've maybe fought once in the last 3 years, but my next fight's a title shot just because I'm Kamaru Usman. It's like, I don't know if that's enough. It's hard to really convince the fans that really follow it week in, week out that you're the next guy.
Well, Henry Cejudo thinks it should be.
Again, okay, there's another guy that's probably... Sorry, there's Abdelaziz, Islam, Kamaru Usman.
And his podcast buddy.
And his podcast host, Henry Cejudo.
Well, another talking point was Ilia and Arman Tsarukyan. Arman dismantled Dan Hooker. And now everyone is saying he's clear the top of the division. He's the clear number 1 contender. Daniel Cormier said, you shouldn't have to wait around. But the people want to know, should it be Paddy Pimblett versus Ilia Topuria or Arman Tsarukyan versus Ilia Topuria?
I feel like this is the exact same discussion as the
welterweight. Exactly.
Arman Tsarukyan is clearly the most deserving fighter. He's the number 1 ranked fighter.
He's the most skilled.
He's the most skilled. I think he's in the top 15 pound for pound. No fight makes more sense than Ilia versus Arman.
But where it gets messy, Ilia has come out and says, I don't have a fight for January. UFC haven't told me. I fight who the UFC tell me. His preference would be to fight Paddy Pimblett. Obviously, easier matchup for Ilia Topuria. Probably not as skilled as Arman Tsarukyan.
Sells better.
And it sells better. Paddy Pimblett, English speaking, very big name, can get the whole of Europe behind him in that fight. It's just a bigger moneymaker for Ilia Topuria. Arman is clearly the tougher matchup for Ilia. Now, it's going to be a matchup in the wrestling. It'd probably go on the feet, and then it'd be who can outstrike each other. That's where the fight will end up being.
Ilia.
And I would lean towards Ilia, but Arman, it's a tough fight. It's not going to be like Ilia is a 2-1 favorite. You know what I mean? But regardless, who deserves it right now? It's Arman Tsarukyan. The guy hadn't fought for over 15 months. He gets a clear submission victory against Dan Hooker. He should be next in line. But Paddy Pimblett's training. And I don't think Justin Gaethje is going to take a Paddy Pimblett fight. Paddy Pimblett is training for Ilia Topuria. He's in a training camp right now. So I don't know where it goes. It's really up to the UFC and what they think the fans want.
The problem is Arman does deserve to be penalised for pulling out of that fight with Islam.
He did.
But I mean,
he was a backup fighter. He made weight as a backup. He now faced Dan Hooker on a fight night before the year's end. He's paid his due. Prison time. He's done his prison time.
As in, the next guy for the title shot can't be Arman Tsarukyan. That's what I mean when I say that. And that's because, yes, he was the backup fighter during International Fight Week for Ilia Charles, but Paddy versus Ilia, they've made it known that this is going to be the fight that they want to make. Paddy came into the octagon after the fight. You can't
that was an error. That was a Joe Rogan error.
You can't waste that moment. You can't waste that moment for me. So I feel like if he is in January, if Paddy's in camp, if Ilia's ready to go, let Ilia versus Paddy be done with. I think Ilia would get...
But you're a hypocrite because you're saying, Usman, don't worry about him. He's ranked 8th. But Paddy Pimblett, who's not even ranked in the top 5...
No, he's 5 now. He's 5 now.
Okay, can get a title shot. He just skips everyone in front of him?
Because Arman was the one that was inactive. He took almost
But he just won a fight. That's not inactive. And he no damage. He's ready to go.
Look, I mean, I said who's more deserving? I'm saying it's Arman Tsarukyan. But who would I want to see and who I think the UFC is going to go with?
Yeah.
Paddy Pimblett. Because I feel like they're still angry at Arman. The way they treat him, the way they talk about him. I don't think Dana White said a good word about him in about 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's strictly because he pulled out of that fight in January. And if they do, I know the rumoured card was for UFC 324 to be in
Los Angeles. Yeah, big Armenian community.
But I don't think it's going to be. The latest reports are it's going to be in Las Vegas. So if it is in Las Vegas, Arman Tsarukyan's really doesn't have that Armenian pull.
Well, this is where it even gets more confusing because Ilia versus Islam is the fight that everyone wants to see, but they don't know which weight it's going to be at. Islam has gone to Russian media and he said, if the UFC want me to go to 155, they have to pay up. It takes years off my life to cut weight. It's very damaging for a fighter. At his age, he's an older fighter now. He doesn't want to make a massive weight cut down to lightweight anymore. But if the UFC pay big dollars, we can see that fight. The only thing is that fight going to be next?
Well, this is what Islam said, direct quote. I'm not young in this sport anymore, and every weight cut takes years off your health. Yeah. It's not as easy as it was before to cut weight. So obviously he does not want to go down to 155.
Listen, he's a smart Dagestani. That's just negotiation in the public. That's like John Jones saying, I'll do it for 30 million. They gave him 30 million. He's saying, I'll go down to 155 if you pay me big money. Hey, here's $5 million, Islam. You can cut weight.
The only thing is, I feel like Ilia wants to go for the 3rd title. And I think if you really, truly asked Ilia what he wants, would he rather fight Islam at 155 or 170? He'll say, look.
Well, this is what Ilia has said.
Perfect plan is 170.
Ilia has said he wants to have one more fight before potentially going up. And he said he would like to have that fight at a catch weight. So he does go up in weight and they meet somewhere in the middle for both titles, and it'll be for the pound for pound king of the UFC.
And I feel like that's a fair thing to do. I understand that maybe holds up two divisions.
Definitely does.
But it is a super fight, a super fight.
Yeah, what's more important, both belts or the pound for pound title?
Like, you know how in Saudi Arabia when they have these made up titles like the crown jewel title?
Yeah.
Let's put this in Saudi Arabia. Let's have a made up pound for pound title on the line.
Yeah, like a BMF, but it's the pound for pound.
You could sell the shit out of that, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure the Saudis would pay big money to let that happen.
I think
and
that-
both fighters would be very, very well
That fight
treated.
would be second to Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. That would be the second all-time highest pay-per-view in UFC history. I'll guarantee that.
Well, because it's literally the two 10 out of 10 fighters. We've said it, I think, last week.
Yeah.
Two 10 out of 10 fighters that would put on an absolute banger. But what's realistically going to happen? Because both of them are now said, I feel like even pundits in the UFC have said, both fighters need to have fights in their division.
And that's what will happen.
So Ilia is probably going to verse Paddy or Arman.
Yeah.
Let's pray that they win so that this fight can happen. And Islam's going to have to verse Ian Garry or Usman. So really, we're not looking at maybe January of 27. That's when it's going to happen.
You know who gets left out of all these conversations? Justin Gaethje. Now, if Kamaru Usman's saying, you know, for my legacy, I deserve a title shot, they might give it to him. Justin Gaethje is not even being talked about after Arman's win. We're only talking about Paddy Pimblett. We're talking about Arman Tsarukyan. Justin Gaethje is now being talked about maybe fighting a Dan Hooker or like
whose fault is that?
you know, maybe a Max Holloway again.
Whose fault is that?
It's Gaethje's for being inactive.
He has fought Rafael Fiziev
Yeah.
in March of this year, and his fight before that was getting absolutely laid out by Max Holloway.
Yeah.
So when you're going on recency bias,
Just
which is
fight-
what
you know
everyone
what?
is talking about,
If Arman gets the next title shot, it only makes sense. Gaethje, just take the fight against Paddy Pimblett. Take the fight against Paddy
Yeah,
Pimblett.
you
You
gotta
saw
go-
what he did to Michael Chandler. If you think you're better than that, beat him and stake your claim for a title shot.
by process of elimination, whoever faces Ilia next, the odd man out should face Justin Gaethje.
100%.
That's the only thing that makes sense. And if you do, put them on the same card. That way they're all on the same trajectory. They're all on the same schedule.
That would be great. If you have Ilia main eventing and then say it's Paddy Pimblett versus Gaethje on the same card, you know, the winner...
on the same press conference
The
stage.
winner goes out and faces, they put them on the same press conference. Whoever wins, they go into the main event. They go into the cage together. They sell the next fight. That just makes sense.
It's easy.
UFC, just let us matchmake. It'll make sense. It's so much easier. But look, something that went viral on social media that I never thought I would see is John Jones hanging out in Chechnya.
John Jones and Khamzat have been hanging out in Chechnya, of all places. I didn't know John Jones wanted to go to Chechnya. I didn't know that was on his bucket list of places to go. But John Jones and Khamzat Chimaev are wrestling on the streets of Chechnya.
And look, Khamzat got the better of him. Look, I know it was a concrete floor. John Jones addressed it. He said, he's a great young athletic man. There was only so much I could do on the concrete. But Khamzat is like, not manhandling, but he's getting the better of John Jones, who's a heavyweight fighter in the UFC.
And the greatest fighter of all time.
Yes.
Someone who's, I think, only been taken down a handful of times in his career.
John Jones ran away.
He did run away because he knows that Khamzat is a scary guy. Now, look, do I believe it?
Look, they're having some fun. It's play wrestling. John Jones is play wrestling with Kadyrov, the leader of
Chechen
Chechnya.
leader. So I don't know if it was really real, if it was an octagon fight, if there were higher stakes.
Yeah.
I do feel like John Jones maybe would get the better of him. But Khamzat, to his credit, is the greatest wrestler in the UFC right now.
I'll tell you right, it's very funny to see this little bromance between John Jones and Khamzat. I didn't think I would see it. They're on Twitter taking selfies together. They're wrestling each other. They're calling each other derogatory terms. It's very funny to see, you know. But Khamzat recently called out Ian Garry and said, this white boy wouldn't stand a chance with me. You saw how he's going with John Jones on the concrete floor. There's no way Ian Garry could match up against Khamzat, let's be honest.
Well, that's the big thing that came out of that Qatar weekend where Ian Garry got pushed and kind of intimidated by Khamzat Chimaev.
Yes.
This was kind of further affirmation that if Khamzat Chimaev wanted to take down Ian Garry, he would have absolutely no trouble. And that's why when he said you would not last 1 minute, you kind of have to believe it.
And when you start talking about matchups of Khamzat taking on Alex Pereira, Khamzat moving up, mate, the guy's got natural strength. He's a great wrestler. Look what they're playing with John Jones.
And he's a big guy.
He's
if
a big guy.
If he has to put on weight to go up into a weight class, I'm sure he'll have no trouble.
Even if he wants to fight once a year, the guy's going to be money going forward. I think at light heavyweight or even potentially heavyweight when he wants to go up.
And I don't know if you saw Ian Garry on Helwani. Kind of said we're both white, so I don't know why you're calling me a white boy. But there is obviously
it's a fair point, but he's more Russian.
there is a difference between Ian Garry's white and Khamzat's
There's a
white.
difference between Irish white and Chechen,
Caucasian.
Caucasus Mountain white.
Like there's a big difference. I
Yeah.
feel like, and kind of John Jones hanging out with Khamzat kind of makes him more black than white. Like he kind of has a bit more of a, I'd say a pass when he's around other people. Like Ian Garry wouldn't get that. He's not that cool.
1,000%. Now, January is coming up.
Paramount card, the first Paramount card of the year.
UFC have said they're going to go all out for the first Paramount card of the year, which is in January. So the rumoured main event for this Paramount card is Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes.
That's going to hurt. That's going to hurt a lot of people because a lot of people are not going to be fans of that. If you're talking Dana White, who's claiming this is going to be the biggest card, first Paramount card, it's going to start off with a bang.
I don't think it's going to be like the biggest card where they were saying the sphere is going to be unbelievable. They just said they're going to start the year off this Paramount card with a bang. And everyone was assuming it's going to be Ilia versus Paddy Pimblett, Ilia versus someone, right? Let's start off with Ilia Topuria. Ilia has said the UFC haven't spoken to me about January. Right now, I'm not fighting. So I don't think Ilia Topuria is going to be fighting in January. Maybe not even February. He doesn't have an opponent.
And look, I don't want to be called a hater and say that this is not the card to really be putting on this main event because Amanda Nunes versus Kayla Harrison is probably going to be one of the biggest fights.
People are saying, hey, she's the only American champ. Why don't you just leave that one for the White House?
That'd be even worse. But let's go through the Twitter comments of the reaction to this rumor.
Yeah.
Surely not. It's a massive fight, but how can we rely on someone that can't cut weight?
Kayla Harrison does struggle sometimes to cut weight.
Way to get a massive crowd of people that will watch the UFC for the first time and then never watch it again. Are we serious?
Yeah.
Look, so it is hard to convince a lot of people that, look, women's MMA is getting more popular. I'll surrender that.
100%.
But it is not popular enough to go the headline of the first Paramount card. No. You need an Ilia versus Arman. You need Ilia versus Paddy.
If it's not going to be the co-main event, which like Zhang Weili versus Shevchenko was a co-main event on a card, Ilia's not going to save the card. I think the UFC is going to make the call. And they're getting Alex Pereira on the line to save another card. If you put Alex Pereira with that co-main event and stack it underneath with some good marquee matchups, that can be a great card. But you're going to need Poatan to answer the call and collect a check for the light heavyweight division. So I think the UFC is going to have to call an audible and start getting Alex Pereira on the phone to save that January card if they're going to go with Kayla Harrison and Nunes to headline that card.
And look, if Amanda Nunes, who does maybe deserve to be a main event at this point in her career.
Yeah, of course.
If she does want to hold out for a main event, let's just not put it on the first card. Let's put it on somewhere in like March or April when they're going to Canada or something like that. Somewhere
Australia.
that deserves a women's fight. Like somewhere that deserves a women's main event fight. Not Las Vegas, not Los Angeles, first Paramount card.
Yeah.
And even then, I'm sure Kayla Harrison doesn't want to be a co-main either. And if you look at, as an example, the greatest women's fight of all time, Shevchenko versus Weili Zhang, was it really that good? You could have had it as a main somewhere else where they maybe could have tuned in a bit better, but it got overshadowed by the rest of the card, which was disappointing. So if I was the UFC, I definitely would not do this. And if this is I hope this is just a rumor because Ilia Paddy should be the first card of the year.
Maybe they see a lot of the backlash that's getting online and they would steer away from it and try and go with a massive headline event for January. But look, something that also was in the news when we were in New York was Dylan Dennis fighting all of Islam's team and the Dagestani crew.
I don't know if it really counts as a fight.
No, yeah, it was more really an all-in brawl, really. But Eric Adams, the still mayor of New York, has come out and said that the Madison Square Garden brawl is unacceptable and should not be taking place in New York and has urged the NYPD to investigate the all-in brawl with Dylan Dennis and Team Islam and people will be held accountable. But someone's got to break it to Dylan Dennis. Someone's got to break it to Eric Adams. The Dagestanis are gone.
They're out of the country.
They're out of the country now. The NYPD has no jurisdiction in Russia. There will be no consequences.
There is consequences of maybe not letting them back in the country if they do want to come. So there is that as a potential consequence.
Yeah, but I feel like Trump and the UFC, they're good mates. If they want to get Islam back in the country, they can get
Not Islam. It's more John Pork.
Yeah.
Maybe like a lot of the other people in his team.
I mean, how hard does the NYPD need to investigate? The whole thing's on video from every different angle. Dylan Dennis got punched in the head from behind a couple of times. Someone tried to throw a chair at him.
More so instigation.
Security was getting kicked. It was a more 10-on-1 brawl. Would they look at Dylan Dennis's tweets in the investigation because how he was inciting violence against his Dagestanis? I don't know.
The other thing is, it's been, say, 10 days since the brawl.
More so. Maybe 2 weeks.
No, it's been about 10, 11 days.
Yeah.
And Dylan Dennis has not said one word, which I find very troubling because...
He's been announced for another fight in Dubai.
So, I don't know what's going on. I fully expected him to come out with lawsuits, to come out with statements, something to just say, look, this is what happened, this is my version of events, but nothing. Not one word has come from him. And even Chanko and other people in Russia...
They're laughing about it.
They're laughing and celebrating
podcast
about
stories about it.
So, I don't know, Eric Adams may be a bit late to the party, but I thought something else would have happened by now. The fact that it hasn't, I don't really see anything happening. I feel like they're just going to brush over
Yeah,
it.
that's just the
put it
man
under
just
the
trying to
bridge.
probably get some clout before Mamdani comes in.
Hey, it's Mamdani's New York, so what are you doing?
Yeah.
If Mamdani said he's putting an investigation in, I think the
But he starts in January.
Okay.
Mamdani starts in January, but again, if Mamdani's running that investigation, the Dagestanis can do whatever they want.
That's
Obviously, there's probably a bit of a bias
Mamdani's
there.
NYC now.
Exactly right. But yeah, I don't know. If I don't think the NYPD can do much in this investigation. I guess we'll wait and see. But Ariel Helwani has been pretty active in interviewing the winners of Qatar, the losers of Qatar, and even the winners of the most recent card at UFC 322. He's spoken to Carlos Prates. Prates has said, look, I think the UFC fans want an entertaining fight. They want to pay money and watch entertaining knockouts, and that's why he deserves to be next to fight Islam. But I don't think the UFC is going to make that fight, especially because he says, I don't want to fight in January because I want to enjoy my New Year's Eve and I want to party. So I don't know if we're going to see Carlos Prates having a matchup against Islam, but who should Carlos Prates fight next?
JDM. JDM does make sense. A former champion, someone who's number one ranked in the division right now. It's a pure striking battle, so Carlos Prates probably won't get found out. Say if he had to verse someone like Bilal.
It's a great matchup.
I feel like that's a great matchup, and it does make a lot of sense for both fighters. Up and coming, most dangerous guy in the division, Carlos Prates. JDM does kind of need to redeem himself, get a win back in the win column. Makes the most sense. I don't know when it'll be because both fighters just fought in November. Probably want at least 2 to 3 months off. Maybe want to spend time with their family at Christmas. So I feel like that'll probably happen maybe like early next year, maybe March, April.
Well, Shavkat addressed his future in the division on Ariel's show and saying he's been injured. He's done his ACL. He went into that Ian Garry fight with an ACL and still won. So he said he wanted to avoid surgery as much as possible. Obviously didn't work out for him. He had to get the surgery. That's why he's been out for so long. He goes, I understand that I might not be able to demand a title shot even with my ranking being so high, but I'm happy to fight. So who would you put Shavkat up against if it's not going to be Islam? You can't run an Ian Garry rematch because we've seen that fight. He got the better of him with an injury. Do you give him a Michael Morales?
Michael Morales or Kamaru Usman? Because Kamaru Usman is calling for a title shot. But I'm very happy
There's
to
no
give him
way
a top
Usman
contender.
takes a Shavkat Rakhmonov.
But that's what he kind of needs to get a title shot. So if he doesn't want to take that, retire. And if you're Shavkat, happy to fight Usman, and I'm happy to fight Michael Morales because, and again, same thing with Carlos Prates, young up-and-comer, dangerous guy in the division, a lot of hype around him. Let's put him up against someone who's a top contender, someone who's in that title discussion and needs a big win, Shavkat.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Makes the most sense.
There's a lot of people Shavkat can face with Bilal recently taking a loss, Sean Brady taking a loss. I think Morales makes the most sense. He's coming off a win. He's undefeated in the division.
And 2 undefeated fighters. You can just write itself.
Exactly right. And that could complement any card going into next year. He said he won't be ready, though, till after February, probably that March period. So that's why he won't anticipate having a fight Islam Makhachev, who wants to have a fight before then, obviously before Ramadan. So I don't know. I think Shavkat versus Michael Morales in March probably makes the most sense.
Look, I don't care as long as Islam's active. That's the only thing I care about right now. As long as the champions, especially Islam, Ilia, are active, I don't care who they fight. Just let them fight. Let them put on events.
Okay, speaking about activity, Nicholas, I saw this stat. I wanted to go. Bro, UFC champion fights since 2021.
And I think the way they've written this tweet is the current person that holds that champion, how many fights they've had since 2021. Not how many championship fights, just how many fights total.
Khamzat Chimaev, middleweight champ, has had 6 fights since 2021.
He's had COVID, injuries, he's been sick, he's got a bad immune system.
Not very active
And
at
people
all.
were ducking him.
Okay. Ilia Topuria, lightweight champion. You could call him the featherweight champion, double champ. Has had 7 fights since 2021. We're talking about in a 4-year period, 7 fights.
That's disappointing.
And I want to intro this by everyone's saying UFC champions aren't active. These are the fights that they've had since 2021, the amount of fights. And I think they're right. There's an inactivity problem in the UFC. Volkanovski, featherweight champion, 8 fights since 2021.
And he took like a year and a half off after getting KO'd.
Tom Aspinall, he was out for a long period of time because of John Jones, has only had 8 fights since 2021.
Again, that's with a year and a half off because of John Jones, poor guy.
Pantoja, not a lot of contenders in his division, 8 fights since 2021. Merab, who has been the most active fighter this year with 4 fights in 2024. Sorry, with 4 fights in 2025, he's had 9 fights since 2021.
Well, this will be 10 next week.
Yes.
So this isn't including the 4th fight, but 10 with 4 this year. I mean, that's really like top heavy.
Now, Islam's only had 2 fights this year, but he has had 10 fights since 2021. So that's one of the most active. If you're talking champions.
Current champions and people that say he's inactive, I mean, the stats kind of don't say that.
Now, the savior of the UFC, the light heavyweight champion, Alex Pereira, 12 fights since 2021. Now, what would the UFC be doing without Alex Pereira? He has saved that many cards. He has been one of the most active fighters in the UFC. He has called when the UFC has asked him for favors. He has honestly saved the UFC the last 4 years.
And look, he's going to have to likely do it again in January.
Exactly. 100%.
Because if Ilia is not even in conversations about a fight for January when it's, 8 weeks away maybe? That's when you got to start camp. So they got to start making. They're going to make some moves now.
I think, like Islam said, we'll know in the next 2 weeks the landscape of what next year's looking like.
Well, hopefully, because they're leaving it pretty late.
Yeah. Well, that is all we have time for here on Trash Talk. Make sure you subscribe to @KRuzBros on YouTube for all of our clips and podcasts and other social media. Tune into @Jon-Bernard K on Instagram and TikTok for all our clips. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, back to you in the studio, Ryan.